In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Cubs opening series. Little Bears, little White Sox, little Bulls, little Blackhawks. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, so make sure you head on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, my friend, how are you doing?
I am doing just fine, thank you. A little bummed that the Illini did not make it to the Sweet 16. It was a pretty ugly game against Kentucky, but oh well. I knew this team was maybe 2 wins in the tournament, maybe. So they didn't go one and done, which is good. So, oh well. Otherwise, yeah, things are good.
Yeah, this there hasn't been a ton of upsets in this tournament. It's um it's kind of gone fairly predictably.
Yeah, this has been kind of a boring March Madness so far, but it's the Sweet 16 coming up, so there's plenty of time for upsets and big games and whatnot. Not to say there haven't been a few big games, but no huge upsets. I mean, that's what people live to watch for. And, it's one of those things where you say, okay, first round was kind of second round so far but hopefully, when you get to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, there's that one big upset that can really spark, that enthusiasm around the tournament. And obviously, people watch and go crazy for it no matter what. But let's be real, when there's a big upset, like the buzz really, really perks up when that happens.
Yeah, it bothers me though when you hear people like, "Oh, the a 12 seed beat a 5 seed." Go back and look. Tell me the last time in NCAA tournament a 12 seed didn't beat a 5 seed. Like that's the first thing I do when I'm putting together like my bracket is I look at the 12-5 matchup and I'm like, okay, which of these 12 seeds is going to win because one of those four games is going to be won by the 12 seed. I
Right.
mean, they're just statistics. Uh, and you know, I put two brackets together and I picked the right one for one of them and I wrong one on another one. But I always know there's a 12 that's going to beat a 5 because it happens every year.
Right. Right.
It's once because those 12 seeds are usually smaller schools that are really good. They just don't get the exposure or play in the same like type of big games. So when you have the 5 seed, which is usually a bigger conference where they didn't weren't as successful as they'd wanted to be, um, and then you get the upset, but that happens every year. So
Right.
I usually look at an upset, the 13 or higher, 13, 14, 15, 16 seed wins. Those are a huge upset.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but a 12 beats a 5 every year.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's like you said, there's always context with that. But another thing to keep in mind too is when you play games as you go along, depending on who moves on, obviously it's good when you have an upset really early because that means a really low seed is going further. So if you don't have that many upsets, you're not going to get many low seeds, obviously, going on into the second and third round or whatever. But there is still the opportunity for a notable upset. I mean, listen, you can look at the top teams right now that are favored in this tournament. What would you say? Duke is probably number one. I would think they are, right?
Yeah, I think at this point now, I think going in, I think Florida probably was, but I think at this point with the way they're playing, you'd probably have to say Duke.
Right. So you might not get like a low seed beating a high seed, but I think at this point, if Duke doesn't get to the at least the Final Four, that would be a pretty big deal at this point with the way they're playing, like you said.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think the only way that happens is if future Bulls superstar Cooper Flag gets injured.
He's so good. He is unbelievable. So I was watching the Duke game before the Illini game today with my family. My grandfather came over. He turned 91 today.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Pops. 91 years of Chicago sports fandom. Bless you, sir.
He's
Truly.
probably seen some amazing stuff.
Well, I remember talking about this with you on this show years ago. He was a season ticket holder for the Bears when they played at Wrigley, and he got that footage from his seat of them winning the 1963 NFL championship at Wrigley Field against the Giants.
Yeah, that
When
was cool
they,
footage.
isn't that cool footage? And what's really spooky about that footage is that was December 1963. So you got to remember, fresh in the mind of the world was the assassination of John F. Kennedy when that was being filmed. So you think about the state of the world when that was being filmed, and you look at the footage itself, it's color footage. It's like watching the Zapruder film, but with no assassinations and watching a football game. But when you think about, too, the historic context of that Bears team, if you take away the 1985 team and you look at the many championships the Bears won pre-Super Bowl era, they beat was it 41-40 when they beat the Redskins 70 to nothing, whenever that was.
Hmm.
But that game in particular, 1963, that would probably be the second or third most celebrated Bears defense in history if you didn't have 85 or even '06 with the more recency bias. I mean, that was a truly special team that the Bears had that year, and the fact that he was able to be there, get the footage, and he saw many other Bears games too there that were notable. He was there with Gale Sayers when he did scored the six touchdowns against San Francisco in 65 or 66, I think that was. So he saw that up close and personal. Then, obviously he saw the 61 Blackhawks Stanley Cup, and then years later, the 85 Bears, and then the Bulls. And of course, obviously, he saw plenty of Cubs heartbreak, the collapse of 69. His first memories, clear memories of going to games, was around the 45 World Series. He didn't actually go to the 45 World Series, but he was at Wrigley Field during that 45 World Series team as a young kid. So, his earliest Cub memories were from a very notable historic Cub team, for better or for worse. So, I mean, to your point, yes, he's seen it all. He has seen some of the great championships of Chicago sports. He's also seen some of the greatest futility of Chicago sports. But back to my original point, we were all here together and we were watching the Duke game, and we were just, my mom used to love watching basketball. She doesn't watch as much sports these days, but even she was watching Cooper Flag. She's like, "Wow, that guy is unbelievable." And we're like, "Yeah, he's going to be the clear number one pick in this coming draft." And I wish like hell the Bulls would be able to get him. They got a 3% chance of doing it, and those ain't great odds.
No, they're not, but they're better than the year that they got Derrick Rose.
That was rigged.
It
Boy from
probably is.
Chicago. I mean, come on.
Um, yeah, I mean, it would be awesome to pair Cooper Flag with Matas Buzelis. And Matas is playing really well. Like, there was a point where he started well, but where he wasn't playing very much at all. And and then he started getting a little more playing time. And then he got that weird spell where he hit like a rookie wall. But now he's back. He's playing really well.
He is. And you saw what happened last night in Los Angeles when he played well and Josh Giddey played really well and Kobe White played really well. On one hand, it's frustrating because you're just in this void of not knowing where to go. You're not bad enough to tank. You're not good enough to win anything. But all I can say is if by some miracle you won the lottery and Cooper Flag became a Bull, everything changes. Everything. Then all of a sudden you can say, look what we have. Now we have a rock, a superstar in the making. All of a sudden, things change for the better, for the much better. You would have a clear direction, and I do believe that Josh Giddey is going to get the bag, and I do think the Bulls are going to try to keep him, and I'll admit he's doing more than I thought he would, and I do think that he was always a very talented guy. He was drafted pretty high. He just was on a team that didn't really have room for him, but it would just be a shame if you found some talent in like Buzelis and Giddey and it just kind of went for naught. It didn't do anything for you.
Y- Josh Giddey's really talented. I give it, and he's, you know, with the size and the position, like kind of a unicorn there, but he can't play defense, and that's pretty much the problem across the board with the Bulls. Is
For many years.
yeah, they're not good defensively. Kobe White is a really good scorer, and for the most part here, like the Bulls can't play defense and aren't very good rebounding. Kobe White, 3 rebounds. Herder, 3 rebounds. Booz Ellis, 2 rebounds. Dalen Terry, like they're not a very good rebounding team, and they're not very good defensively. So they've got to be able to push drop 146. Like that's how they win games.
Right. I mean, you look at what they did last night. You scored 146 in Los Angeles, but there were plenty of games too where they did a similar thing and the score was obviously much closer. I mean, they trounced them last night, but yeah, I mean, how many games this year did they have to score at least 135 to win a game?
Yeah. They're terrible defensively, and there's still bad roster construction on here, but adding a guy like Cooper Flag masks a lot of things because when you have a guy that is probably going to be a superstar, it makes everything better than it would be. Like it just it masks a lot of things. The NBA is there's 5 guys on the court and one guy can just take over everything. Look at how many times LeBron James has carried a team. And it's just it really does make a difference. And when you've got I'm not going to say Matas is a budding star, but a budding very good player. Maybe he becomes a star, but I don't want to go that far. But he's looking like he could be very good. And same with Kobe White and Josh Giddey on the verge. Like, okay, if you could add some wing defensive players and an athletic big man that can play defense, maybe suddenly this team goes from, you know, borderline play-in and the worst lottery pick to, a team that could make the playoffs comfortably and maybe even win a series.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a clear direction? I mean, and I will say this too. I don't really know how much I buy of what's going on lately because we've gone through this shit before, but we even saw it last year. And I don't want to get personal against him, but it seems like last year and this year, when you don't have Zach LaVine, all of a sudden things look a little more functional. And I'm sure that there's more to it than meets the eye, but there's always chemistry on a team, right? And this isn't to say he was a bad teammate or a bad player, but you can't help but notice how this team has played without Zach, even over the past few years. And, Zach, it's a very complicated story with Zach, I think, because he has gone through stretches where he's legit played like an all-star and has been an all-star, and you see his value on a team. But you also saw times where the Bulls were just a complete train wreck with Zach on the court. And, I'm not saying this team's good now. Do not get this mixed up. But maybe it seems like some other guys are starting to find their way and find a bit of an identity now.
I
I
mean,
don't
that's what we
really
hope.
know.
That's what we hope Patrick Williams would happen, but that's
That
never
ship sailed.
that's not going to happen. Um, but I mean, the Bulls faced Zach LaVine the other day, and what do you have? 8 points. I mean,
Yeah, was it that bad? I didn't even see.
let me pull it up. 8 points, 1 rebound, 5 assists in 33 minutes. 2 of 9 shooting, 1 of 6 from three. Um, here's the thing with Zach. Is he a talented scorer? Yes. Can he carry a team on his back when it matters? I don't think so. And I think he needs to be where he would, I mean, absolutely dominate is on a team that has 2 stars, where he's the third head of the three-headed monster.
Right, he shouldn't be Alpha 1.
Yeah, but like where if somebody has got an off night, he can take off and score, or he can. I mean, he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. He's become one.
Yes.
Is spot up and shoot, and because he's a guy that you have to defend, you've got to be careful because if you commit fully to try to block a shot, he can take that to the rim and just with ease. So like that's a matchup problem, and that's where he would have excelled. I think is a team that just has 2 star players, and he's the third. And
Right.
you know, um, not quite the Jimmy Butler situation, but Jimmy Jimmy went to a team where he's not the alpha, and a guy not only right now but in the history of the NF or the NBA is significantly better player than Jimmy, and it's working out.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a lot of complication around Jimmy, and we all know how talented he is. We've seen what he's done in certain playoff games, but there's a bit of a complication with him. Just it's there's a reason he's been on so many teams since he left the Bulls, and we saw how it ended in Miami, and it's just kind of
Awfully.
frustrating. Yeah, it's just kind of frustrating because of how talented he is as a player, and you know that he can step up when the lights are the brightest. I mean, it was insane a few years ago when the Miami Heat were a play-in tournament team and they made it to the final. Like, insane. Nobody thought that that kind of run was possible from a team in that position. It's not to say they weren't a talented team, but that's a play-in tournament team making it to the final. Like, that's a run that was greatly in the hands of Jimmy Butler. He was a huge, huge part of that.
I forget how long he's been in the league.
2011, right? That's when he was
Yeah.
drafted.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's over 10 years.
Yeah, he's been in the league a long time.
It was probably one of Garpax's best draft picks.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons with the Bulls, season and a half with Minnesota, half season with Philadelphia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 seasons with Miami. Now the half season with Golden State.
Yeah, he's kind of bounced around a bit since the trade. But you know what I find funny too is I look back at Jimmy's career, at what it's been so far, and I always tend to forget he was in Philadelphia. And the 76ers have been such a weird organization where they look like they're primed for something great, and then things just epically don't work out. And then they kind of reset and then they do the same thing over and over again. It's like they were
Trust the
kind of
process.
trust the process. And remember back in, I want to say it was 2011, 2012, 2013, it was kind of like when the Eagles were that team. And the Eagles were like we have everything great. We're the super team. And it ended up just not working. And then obviously they reinvented everything. When Doug Peterson came around in 2017, they go on the run and whatnot. But it's like those early 2010s Eagles teams. It's like, oh, they're primed for something good. And then they're just not doing it. It's kind of like that. And I remember when trust the process became the big thing over there. You want to talk about frustrating if you're a fan. Because you have had flashes of the team looking legit good in Philly.
Yeah, and now it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah. And Joel Embiid, that whole thing is. Ugh.
Yeah. That's not a good situation.
No, no, it is not. I mean, the Jimmy Butler wasn't a good situation in Miami. The Joel Embiid situation is not good in Philadelphia. The Bulls right now are in this purgatory, just weird spot, but they don't have much of a drama issue that we know of right now, at least. So count your blessings.
I mean, to use that as a transition, a drama situation. Does it make you feel like Seth Jones was a drama situation before he got moved from the Blackhawks?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of smoke around this whole situation with Seth Jones. And I mean, it's not even smoke, really. Like, he kind of flat out said, my vision and where I want to be is not here right now. I want to be in a situation where we can succeed. And the Blackhawks clearly are not. He flat out told reporters that. And when
Yeah, and I
people,
mean, but that's one thing to say that, but then I mean, there's plenty of players that, are in their prime or starting to get to the back end of their prime and they're like, I want to be on a winning team, but they're not a distraction or a problem. And it seems like Seth Jones, like the mood around that locker room changed when he was gone.
well, yeah, and I mean, that's kind of what I was gonna say too, is that the smoke really was the locker room with Seth Jones and people getting frustrated, even the higher ups getting frustrated. What I think is after Seth Jones said that, that kind of turned up the heat even further. So when you hear the talks, the rumors of there being some, I guess you could call it turmoil in the clubhouse, or I guess locker room. You don't really call a hockey locker room a clubhouse, but the fact that there was those rumors, it makes you want to believe it, right? I mean, it feels like it's true because you hear rumors and you're like, I don't know. It sounds like a rumor. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when you hear these rumors about Seth Jones and there being some tension in that locker room, I tend to believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would I have guessed it at the start of the season? No.
No.
He seemed pretty chill. But then when, it seemed like he was visibly frustrated and wanted out, I didn't, I guess I wouldn't have guessed, locker room headache. But as you got further along, and then he was gone. And then you just saw like the mood change around there and the way that players opened up differently and the interviews with people were different once he was gone. Like I was like, wow. Like no, like it makes me even happier. Like, it was I don't want to call it a divorce, but it was a split that needed to
I'd
happen.
call it I called it a divorce when I wrote about it for Shy City Sports.
Okay. But it it needed to happen, and usually when those situations arise, you don't get the return you want. And I think the return on him was pretty good.
Oh, I think it was a very good trade. The other thing I wanted to say too about this whole situation is I don't necessarily think that even if there was turmoil and hard feelings and some frustration in the locker room, that it was necessarily meaning that Seth Jones was being a bad guy or an awful teammate or was deliberately going out to piss people off or cause a rift. It was just a situation that was like, okay, this doesn't fit me, this doesn't fit you. And when those situations happen, it's normal, I think, for there to be tension, even if nobody's going out of their way to, quote, be a bad teammate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. Um, but if but I think the tone he set probably impacted things without him being doing it intentionally or trying to be a bad guy.
For sure.
And and maybe even people don't see him as a bad guy within the clubhouse. Um, but uh, but it's just like I think we've all been around people that just are in a bad mood and they just you don't hate them or anything, but they they change the mood around you.
Right, exactly. I think that's
And
a good way to put it.
and that's probably just a prolonged version of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you put it really, really well.
Um, let's see. Did you see that Pat Maroon announced he's going to retire at the end of the season?
I did, yeah. He mentioned it before the game against the Blues, and the Blues did a really nice tribute for him because he was part of their Stanley Cup team in 2019. He was there for a number of years, so it was a really cool gesture on their part. They gave him the number one star of the game after it was over. He had a heck of a career, so hats off to him.
Yeah. We'll see how he plays the rest of the season. Uh, it'd be interesting if he just throws everything into it or if he just dials it in.
Retire itis.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that just like, I'm retiring. I'm just gonna half-ass
Screw
this.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, uh, let's see. Uh, Artem Leshkinov, uh, has been playing well.
Mm-hmm.
He he looks like a dude that you would have drafted in the top five in the draft. That's been very good. That pairing with Wyatt Kaiser could be a long-term pairing there.
Yeah, and it's nice that he's getting this first taste of the NHL now, and the fact that he'll be able to keep growing and do it kind of in a low pressure situation, whether it's up with the NHL or in Rockford, whatever. I think getting in this initial taste was a really, really good thing. And I am very excited about his potential because, we've drafted defensemen before and we've tried developing a number of guys. Some have been okay, a lot have not worked in recent years, but, this guy feels it's very early on, but he feels like he could be the real deal, at least something positive for your team. I mean, this was a very high draft pick, obviously. He was what, the number one or the number two overall pick in the draft. So there's a reason he was taken this high, and you're seeing some of the things he can do.
Right. Um, do you worry at all about Connor Bedard?
No, no. I think there's still things that need to grow. I think there are still things that you wish could have been a bit further along, but he just scored his 20th goal today at the age of 19. And if there's anything I sometimes worry about with him, it's not like a worry like, oh, this is going to derail his career and whatnot. But I think one of the things he might have to work on is not getting in his own head so much when things don't go right.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely a very emotional player, and it would be it would be nice if they had a veteran on the line regularly with him that he could build chemistry with that could kind of help out. Um, I I think he needs a mentor, and not somebody that's just a veteran, but somebody that like somebody that had been very talented at one point and, is at the back nine of their career. Um, I don't know who that is. I thought, you know, fleetingly, I thought maybe Patrick Kane could be that guy, but I just think he needs somebody. I feel like he feels like he's on an island a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go out this off season and you get him his co-guy, so to speak, and you can have him play more consistently on a line with top tier NHL talent, that's going to go a long way.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I just wonder if they're going to bring in a different head coach for next season, or if Sorensen is going to get the nod, and how that impacts
God,
him.
there is absolutely no way you can keep Sorensen as your head coach.
I would agree with that, but worse things have happened.
I don't see it.
I mean,
I
remember
don't
last
see it.
time the Blackhawks had an interim coach from the minors, and then they
Yes,
kept him, and he was terrible.
but to be fair, that first stint, that interim year, things actually went decently for them. And you had a veteran team. You still had Kane, Tays, Keith, Seabrook. You had a lot of those guys still there, and yeah, I don't see Kyle Davidson doing that. I just don't.
I hope not. No, nothing against Anders Sorensen. It's I just don't think he's ready to do it on this level.
No, no. And I think he seems like a good guy. I think the players like him and all, but
I think his job is to keep the wheels on the bus and keep everybody happy until they can bring in somebody.
right, right. And this is going to be a huge hire because this is a critical step in your rebuild.
I mean, you've got the point where you're starting to get your young players in that you tried to build solely through the draft. They're starting to come through. You've got a shit ton of money. You've shed a lot of the dead weight. You've got room to make moves. It's about time to put up or shut up.
You say keep your hand on the bus as it keeps going. I just picture this this broken down, decrepit school bus just going completely nuts down a street, hitting garbage cans, and you got freaking mailboxes flying, and it's like spinning out half the time.
Uh, so I have a non-Blackhawks hockey question for you.
All right.
Is Ovechkin going to do it this season?
What, he's got 7 to go?
7 to go, and they've got 12 games.
It's possible. It's possible.
I think he's going to push because I don't know if he's going to come back.
If he doesn't get it this year, I don't see any way why he doesn't try for it next year.
Oh yeah, yeah. But if he gets it, I mean, he's like what 41 years old. Like he might just hang him up when he gets that record.
It's
Um,
crazy though, because he's still so good.
it's, but he talked a couple years ago, like how much longer is he going to play long enough to do this? And he's still very good, but man, it's just got to be tough on your body.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine because not only has Alex Ovechkin played in a million regular season games, but he's also played in countless postseason games and Olympic games, international tournament, whatever. So those add up too.
I mean, yeah, he's playing on the team with, uh, uh, by far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference, like by far.
hmm They
Uh,
clinched the postseason already.
yeah, like the next best team has 88 points. They have 102.
Isn't that wild?
So, uh, he's 7 goals away. I mean, I'm just waiting for any day now for a hat trick to happen, and and then he just puts it in overdrive. That team, this is the perfect scenario, I think, for him to do it because his team is really good. They're not like fighting day in and day out to like make the postseason. They're locked in. So they can just let him just go score. Who cares? Who cares if you're doing your defensive responsibilities? Just go score. And he is going to take so many shots. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, seriously. And everybody who sees him wind up with the puck is gonna rise out of their seat in anticipation. It's gonna be one of those, and you know that every road game, people are going to buy up those tickets to try to see history if he's on the verge of getting that record-breaking goal. Heck, they'll do it now just to see him get close to it.
I'm trying to see if they play the Flyers because he might score 7 right in that game.
Yeah, no kidding. The Blackhawks scored a season high 7 today at the United Center.
April 4th, the Blackhawks play the Capitals, but it's in DC. That would have been a good game to go to. Friday
Well,
night.
yeah. Well, didn't Ovechkin? I remember he scored his 600th goal against the Hawks at the United Center.
Let's see. Who do they play the rest of the game? They got Jets, Wild, Sabres, Bruins, Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Islanders, Hurricanes, Blue Jackets again, Islanders, Penguins.
Hey, if he gets a couple of hat tricks in 2 of those games, he'll shave it down to one.
Yeah,
And he had
let's
a
see.
hat trick not too long ago.
Yeah, let's see. The Bruins are bad. Hurricanes are good. Islanders are okay. Penguins are bad. Um, Jets are good.
Jets are really good.
Um, so it's a mixed bag. Blackhawks are bad. He's got a couple bad teams in there.
Just scored 5 goals on the Blackhawks, I guess. It's possible.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, today's game was a little fun. I just saw clips of it. I forgot that they were playing
Yeah,
early.
it was one of those great 2 o'clock starts on Sunday afternoons at the United Center. They used to be such a more common thing when I was a kid, and those are the games my dad and I would always go to. My dad, grandpa, and I would usually go to those 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon games at the UC when I was growing up. And I'll never forget, it was 2008, the 07-08 season, and we went to a Sunday afternoon game against the Canucks. It was Patrick Kane's rookie year, and he scored 2 goals in the game. And I remember my dad saying, that kid's only like 18 years old and watch out for him. They say he's going to be really, really good. And yeah, I think he was onto something there.
Yeah, the 2 o'clock starts are nice because you get to the game. It's not early, so you can putz around the house a little bit, go to the game, come home, have your Sunday night dinner, and not be exhausted the next day for work. It's like a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the ideal time for a Sunday afternoon. It's like, okay, you're home for dinner. You already saw the game. Because even like when they became more common with the 6 o'clock starts on a Sunday, okay, I like those too, but you're still going to be at the game for what, 3 hours, so 6, 7, like games ending 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it's like, all right, gotta get home, gotta get to bed. You're still kind of drawing that line there, but oh, give me all the 2 o'clock starts on Sundays, man.
Yeah, I like the earlier starts period, but those Sunday ones are nice. Um, I like I like those early Saturday ones too, like a 5 o'clock Saturday start.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Those are great because then you could still, if you wanted to go out on Saturday night, you can, or if you wanted to come home and like just chill and watch a movie, like you can still do that, and not be up all night. Like it's a nice time. You can go have an early dinner, go to the game. It's perfect.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Should we talk a little baseball and then end it with Bears?
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, so the Tokyo series was not what I think Cubs fans were hoping for.
It's on one hand, it's not what I was hoping for. On the other hand, can I say it was overly unexpected? Also, no. It was still frustrating though. And let me just start by saying this. And it's pretty obvious. We knew this was obvious. The Dodgers are in a completely different stratosphere than you. It's not even close. A team in the middle of spring training with two of its biggest bats missing can just go ho hum, will win anyway. I mean, they didn't have Mookie Betts, they didn't have Freddie Freeman. Didn't matter.
Not just two of their best bats, but two of the best bats of the last 20 years.
Yes, yes. Freeman is an MVP. Mookie Betts is an MVP. These are MVP caliber players. These are future Hall of Fame players. And
And
then you,
not borderline Hall of Famers, like just absolute slam dunk Hall of Famers.
oh yeah, Mookie Betts is going to be one of this generation's greatest players, and the Red Sox continue to look like utter fools. I mean, just cheap, stupid what they were doing with Mookie Betts. Just completely insane. But the Dodgers have him now with a bunch of these other guys, and not only the lineup. Put aside the lineup for the sec. Here you are watching Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki, and you got 100-mile-an-hour fastballs coming at you and splitters that dive so deep that you don't even know how that's physically possible. And you can't help but sit there and watch as a big market team. Why don't we have that? Why don't we have a guy that throws like that? Why not? Why are we so insistent on finding the Colin Rays and Matthew Boyds? And listen, Roki Sasaki probably always wanted to be a Dodger, so did Yamamoto. But my true hope is that the Cubs can develop somebody like that, whether
Or,
it's Cade Horton, Ben
or
Brown, or someone else.
build yourself into a spot where players like that want to come.
Oh, that would help too.
I mean, be bold. Go out there and do things that make you be a destination that people want to come to. Like just do that. It just takes uh you've built infrastructure, you've built uh you've built like the facilities, you've got over that hump and got yourself a World Series, and you've changed the culture, and you've got the highest paid manager in baseball. Throw money at it. Throw money. You are printing money. You are a rich family. Throw money at it. Become a just an absolute powerhouse organization.
They'll throw some money, but they'll draw a line in the sand. And I understand that not every team is going to be the Dodgers. I think like the Yankees are the only team that could be the Dodgers, but
But
I mean,
they've reined it back too. Like they lost a superstar in free agency. When did that used to happen? The Yankees are not the Yankees that they used to be, and not that they're a pauper franchise or anything, but they're not the Yankees that they used to. The Dodgers are the
the
Yankees
Dodgers
now.
are the Yankees now. Yes. Yes.
And the Yankees are not quite the Red Sox when the Yankees were the Yankees. They're they're somewhere between the Red Sox and the Cubs. It's like
Mhm.
the team that spends a lot, but they're also not just going to buy everybody. And there needs to be another franchise that goes out there and rivals the Dodgers in what they're building.
And right now, not saying that the Dodgers are an automatic, oh, they're going to win a World Series automatically. A lot of things can happen in a 5 or a 7 game series or a 3 game series, but on paper, Nobody's really close. I mean,
No,
let's be
I
real.
mean, over 162, they're going to dominate. That's what's going to happen. And you're right. But once you get in the postseason, it's crazy things happen is because, but the traditional, like, well, anything can happen doesn't quite apply nearly as much to the Dodgers because they are just stacked everywhere. You would need a bunch of players to just hit a cold streak at the same time
Yeah,
to,
you need to catch some breaks.
yeah, I mean, you need, because, all right, Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani could just go into an absolute funk. Happens.
Yep.
But what are the odds then that, every other one of their superstar players goes into a funk too? Like, you're going to have guys that are just hitting, and you basically need to catch them at the right time while they're in a little bit of a slump and you are on fire. Like, that's just has to happen. And could it happen? Yeah. It's just they've almost bulletproofed their roster to prevent that.
Yeah. And again, you watch it and you know that two games isn't going to dictate the rest of the 160. We're not sitting here and saying that determined everything. It just, you can't help but feel a little just down when you see a team like that you wish you could be. And I think a lot of fans got some, I guess, a little PTSD, I guess, from these games because what was a common theme, especially in the second game? You had plenty of chances on the bases and you didn't cash them in. And, that's been a common problem, obviously. And, that's the kind of thing that's frustrated us for many, many years. And it kind of reared its ugly head in game two because you had a chance. And listen, you didn't
Fake
get,
rally.
yeah, fake rally, several fake rallies. You didn't win, but you were in those games, but it's kind of a microcosm of what this team has been. You're there, you're within grasp, but you just didn't quite get it. And I think that it's very easy for a fan to overreact, so to speak, because we've seen this type of movie before. And the whole thing, it seemed like the Cubs had a great time in Japan, and that's great. And I think it's great for the game too, but it's got to be hard interrupting your spring training, going halfway around the world to a completely different schedule, and playing meaningful baseball. It wasn't an exhibition, it was meaningful baseball.
Yeah, and it's weird. So you play two, you go to Japan, you play what, two exhibition games and then two real games, and then you have like a week and a half off or week and a half of back to spring training and then real baseball again. And it's
Right.
weird. And this was this series good for the Cubs? Not record wise. They talk about how camaraderie wise and whatever, it was good, but it was definitely good for baseball. Fanatics said that they made $40 million in merchandise sales.
That's a lot of dough.
Yeah. This is, it's weird though. Like, it's weird that MLB pushed this so hard. I mean, this was pushed in Japan, but like, this wasn't a big thing for the United States. Like this should have been a big thing here too. Like, hey, look, we're breaking these boundaries and playing baseball, like regular season baseball games in Japan. Like baseball, MLB is a weird organization and they are terrible at marketing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because one of the talking points was MLB's doing this thing with this international play, and they're just not promoting it content wise like the individual teams or the players do. I mean, a lot of the social media content that we got from Japan for the Cubs was through like Justin Turner's social media.
Like baseball in general just does a poor job of marketing its stars.
And I think that one of the big issues with the Manfred era is that they're putting their energy in growing the game in the wrong places. And this is an example of that.
Baseball has a big opportunity. Like the fact that the regional sports networks are dying is puts baseball at uh a fork in the road. And they could baseball could just really die off and become the fourth sport behind hockey if it doesn't recognize and fix things. But also getting out from under those like, old school cable only deals gives you the opportunity. This is an opportunity for you to ramp things up and just be like, hey, you know what? We're going to move baseball to an internet model. We're going to get all of the revenue. We're not sharing the revenue with anybody and really boost this. Let fans see all of the games. Uh, you know, have you could black things out outside of like I mean, this is spitballing and you'd have to dig into the numbers, but like make it all streaming. Build an app so everybody with a smart TV or smartphone could watch and black out the non-local games. So, but like you can watch your home team play for free. And if you want all of the games, then you could pay for the package. So you could still get the free games and they're supported by ad revenue, blah, blah, blah. And then um, have a have the rest of the games be available and so people could watch it, have MLB control this. And I think it's a really neat idea is embrace what people are doing, that people watch games outside of being in their house on cable and have condensed versions of games. Not everybody can sit down and watch a 3-hour baseball game every night. Is have
Right.
a condensed game the next day. So you could sit down and watch the day before's game or like, the next morning, and watch a half an hour game that's condensed. You catch all the action. Have have a thing where you do screen and screen. Oh man, Shohei Otani's up with the bases loaded. Screen and screen and highlight showcase those things. Have you know beef up your web presence on social media and highlight the young stars of the game and your existing stars. Like baseball be better.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree.
Um, there's baseball could basketball is struggling right now. Hockey's never returned fully from the strike. Baseball has an opportunity to seize that coveted number 2 spot behind the NFL.
We did see though this year with the NHL that that tournament really did hype up some interest again.
I
Which,
hope
and I feel like the MLB needs that type of moment. And I think the World Baseball Classic is really cool and they do a number of things. But if there was something, and I like the All-Star game personally, but if there was something maybe you can do with that and kind of have that quote tournament moment that hockey had, that could go a long way.
yeah, it just be think outside the box. Like use these setbacks of teams losing their TV deals as an opportunity to progress baseball and be like, you know what? This stinks and but it gives us the flexibility to do something that we've never been able to do because teams were locked up. Is
Hmm.
let's all join forces here and push baseball into the 21st century.
Yep.
Let's see. Shota looked really good.
Yeah, good for him. Didn't give up a run or a hit.
Yeah. It sucked that he only pitched what 4 innings.
Yep.
Justin Steele did not look good.
No, he looked bad.
He looked bad. Seiya Suzuki looked bad.
Hmm.
Matt Shaw did not have the opening series I think he would have wanted.
I think there's going to be some growing pains with him. I mean, I think he's going to have to make some, and this is natural for a rookie, but I think there's going to be a lot of adjustment, growing pain times with him because that swing looks a little funky to me.
Yeah, I mean the one hit was a bounce back to the what was it, back to the pitcher and off the
Off the
glove.
glove. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not like he was making solid contact.
The
Um,
at bats are good. Like the at bats are good. Like you see the talent there. I just think there's going to be some adjusting to the majors. There's some things that you can do in the minors that you can't do in the majors that you just kind of need to adjust to.
it's going to be interesting to see how the Cubs respond. So they went a game on 319, and then the next meaningful game is 327. So a little over a week. And it's going to be interesting to see how they respond because it's not like they're going up against a bum team. Arizona's a very good team.
Yeah. This schedule to start the year is brutal.
The nice thing is that they're playing in warm weather, so it's not like they're going from spring training to playing in like 30-degree, dreary, rainy Chicago weather.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's tough. Like I played baseball growing up, and man, when those games were cold, I didn't want to run for balls. I didn't want to swing the bat hard. I just wanted to get home and get dry. And um, it's a, I know major league's a little different, but still, you just those games are not the same when it's
When you
cold
hit the
and rainy.
ball, yeah, and it stings.
It's a lot different than playing in 85-degree sunny weather.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, White Sox. There's not much going on.
A lot of
Other
injuries.
yeah, a lot of injuries and Drew Thorpe, um, Tommy John surgery. And that was the fear, I think, when he left the game with elbow tightness. You're like, uh-oh, that's not good.
Yeah, that was a big alarm bell early. But you know what? If you're gonna get Tommy John surgery, I guess you might as well get it now, right?
Well, I texted Gary. Gary's on vacation with his family in London, and I texted him because I know he's not keeping up with the White Sox what's going on. I was like, hey, Drew Thorpe, Tommy John. He goes, who cares? The Sox are 5 years away from competing anyway. So like, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna rebuild, get your things right now. I mean, the good thing is Tommy John isn't the death sentence it once was.
Yeah, when I was a kid, man, Tommy John, you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, so many injuries though. I mean, they were saying uh, Josh Rojas and Mike Talkman are hurt. Just kind of an endless pile. They released Brandon Drury. So I'm
Yeah.
like, who the hell is going to be on this roster?
Well, this is my guess at opening day roster. Uh, Andrew Vaughn at first. Chase Medroff at second. Lenine
Who?
Sosa. Chase Medroff.
Who that? Who?
Lenine Sosa at short. Miguel Vargas at third. Uh, in a bit of good health news, Benintendi is back, but I think he's going to DH. So I'm going to have
Yeah.
Benintendi at DH. Um, I had Talkman, but I don't know how serious he's hurt. But I have Talkman, uh, Austin Slater, Luis Robert, as your outfield spots, and then Lee catching. I have no idea what this season's going to look like when they have opening day. That's my guess right now.
Ay.
Uh, this team will definitely lose 100 games again.
I'd be shocked if they didn't. If they
I would
don't,
be
then good job.
if they somehow manage to win more than 62 games. I will be absolutely floored, and I might eat my shoe.
Is that a bet?
Yes.
Now I hope that they definitely don't lose triple digits now. And then next thing you know, you're uploading a video of you grilling your shoe.
Tomorrow, Alex is going to be on Twitter with a White Sox hat and a little pennant on a stick going, "Go Sox. Go Sox."
Alex, are you okay? I want my co-host to have to eat his shoe. I'll look up shoe recipes for you. Grilled shoe,
Just-
broiled shoe,
It'll be
fried
like the
shoe.
commercial or the cartoons where they're like through the they're pouring, you got a pot of boiling water with a shoe in it and they're just stirring the shoe in.
Hey, listen, you made this. You mentioned this. This is on you. If you have to eat your shoe, if you wouldn't have said anything, you wouldn't be eating it. Just saying.
Bears talk.
Yeah.
There's not a ton going on. Um, Tevin Jenkins signed a 1 year deal with Cleveland.
Yep. So long, Tevin Jenkins. Good luck.
And my favorite comment on it was one was, man, Tevin Jenkins either got a lot of money to go play for the Jets of Ohio, uh, or that was the only option was because last year he played for the Jets of Illinois.
Oh, geez.
And it's like, eh, that's not a wrong comment. But
Yeah.
you know,
Depressing, but
the Browns fans are championing this like they just the best guard in football. And I I when Tevin Jenkins is healthy, he's really good. He found his home at right guard. He's a right guard. He's not a left guard. He's not a tackle. The weird thing is like the Browns, I don't know if they have a right guard spot for him to play. I wonder if he's going to be a swing tackle, or I mean swing guard, a backup. But the thing, he's just not healthy ever. He just
yeah.
can't stay healthy. Even
N
even when he's playing, there's always, he comes out for a few plays because he tweaked something. And you're like, oh,
Or he
Tevin
goes back
Jenkins
to the
limping off
locker
the
room
field.
in the first half and then maybe comes back.
It's unreal. And this was this year, like same thing when he talked about how he was taking care of his body and he was really focusing his time, effort, and money into his body. And it's still like the issues were there, and I feel terrible about it. But it, it's you couldn't trust a guy like that. And the Bears clearly were ready to move on because they didn't make that offer. And the league basically told him like you're not going to earn a lucrative contract. You're going to get a 1 year deal.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it too, is Tevin Jenkins has the opportunity to use this 1 year deal to potentially make a shit ton of money in the future because if he is healthy and he plays to the Pro Bowl level that he's capable of doing, then knowing how expensive linemen are, he's going to get a massive payday. So he is going to be playing for a big contract.
I mean, if he plays, like I
If
said,
he
is
plays, yes, he's
he
got to
might
be
be
healthy.
he's
Yes.
got to be healthy and he might be a backup. Like he's going to have to go out there and win a spot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a tougher battle maybe than he would like to think of, kind of going into this offseason, regardless of where he was going to end up. But he's should hopefully, for his sake, be pretty motivated.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that he does well. I don't wish bad about him. I liked him. I always wanted him. I wanted him to be the Bears' right guard of the future, and it just didn't work out.
Right.
No hard feelings. Um, what else? I went through, and I'm not going to walk through it because it's stupid at this point, but I looked I looked at the Bears contracts that they have right now on March 23rd. I was like, who is under contract for the Bears? And then I put together a 53-man roster with just those players just to see what they look like. I mean, we know what the starters kind of look like, and we can kind of vaguely say like, oh, this is where I think we need depth. But really putting it on paper and you know, positions where you're like, oh man, they've got like 15 dudes, like those are not all going to make it. Really, we weaning it down to the 53-man roster. Um, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to not open them, but made it more clear where the team needs are. And so I I put together, and it's just back of the envelope stuff because, like edge rusher. Last year they had six to open the season, and they've only really got five under contract, I think. Unless there's like a futures contract that I couldn't find. But so I put question mark and still allotted six. So there's but I put together three buckets. Positions where I think they need to add depth, positions where I think they need an infusion of talent overall. Maybe not necessarily a starter, but infusion of talent to make the roster group better. And then positions where they're fine this year, but they need a starter for next year or the year after that they've got to start grooming. Um, so which of those buckets do you want me to go through first?
How about we start from the bottom and work our way up?
All right. So the depth positions. So the Bears made another move at wide receiver. Uh, they signed Duvernay, who's another guy who has return ability. So I think right now their wide receiver group is DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, um, Zacchaeus, Duvernay, Scott, and then the last guy I just threw in Torrey. Who knows who makes that sixth spot, but they they're pretty they're pretty good one through four. I feel okay with that. Um, but I would love to see them add somebody that makes Tyler Scott a bubble roster bubble kind of guy. So
Yeah, I agree.
I have wide receiver as um as one of those depth spots.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Tight end group, you have Cole Kmet, Durham Smythe, and then I picked one of the two other guys on the roster, Joel Wilson. Um, I think I would like to see more tight end depth. Um, I like your first two guys, but it would be really nice to have a guy that fills the role of that, straight up blocking tight end. Um, and or a guy that can go out and be that receiving tight end. Just I think they need more tight end depth.
I agree. I agree because I mean, you look at the past few years and what's been a common theme is, and I'm not saying the move they made this year is going to fail, but we've gone through, Robert Tunyon and Gerald Everett, and those just haven't panned out. And obviously, you've had Mercedes Lewis just to be kind of a blocking veteran guy, but he's not going to be a production downfield target type tight end. So it'd be nice to have another reliable guy and obviously target Cole Kmet more than you did last year, but still you'd want another reliable guy at two at least or three.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is if you get somebody that you're happy with, if he's a straight blocking tight end, Durham Smythe is flexible enough where, all right, you can put him in routes, and is he going to be, a guy that is a mismatch? No, but he can be productive. And if you get a guy that is not a blocker, like a Brock Bowers type, where he's not a blocker at all, he's just he's a glorified wide receiver playing tight end. Then you could put Durham Smythe to be that blocking guy. And so you've got the flexibility to be able to pick a tight end that you think is just talented, regardless of the role. Um, and I would not be shocked if they used that one of their two second round picks on a tight end.
Right.
There's some really good ones in this draft. Um, but yeah, that would be nice to have the that depth. Um, and then the third one I have is cornerback. Is Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon are your top three. But I like Josh Blackwell. I really like Terrell Smith. You've got five really solid cornerbacks, but I've always liked Jalen uh, Jones, and he has not been brought back yet. And there's a possibility he is. If they bring him back, that probably changes this. But right now, it's probably Alex Cook as that sixth cornerback. I don't know if I love that. Um, so I put cornerback as depth, and that's really, you know, that's a special teams guy slash worst case scenario type player. You're looking at multiple injuries, but um, I would like to see that improvement. And then, you know, I think Tyreek Stevenson is going to be have a really good bounce back year, but it would be nice to have somebody push for that outside corner spot opposite of Jalen Johnson.
That's fair. I feel pretty good about our corner depth. I know, obviously, I think you do too, but um, I'm also with you on Jones, and I do think it's still very possible they bring him back.
Yeah. Then I have the bucket with infusion of talent. Um, the first one I have there is running backs. Because right now, they last year they carried four running backs on the roster to start the season. And so this year, if I put four, it's DeAndre Swift, uh, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer, who they just brought back, but he's a special teamer. You don't want him getting a lot of carries. He's a special teamer. He's a really good special teamer, but he's a special teamer.
Right.
And then Ian Wheeler, who we became a fan favorite from Hard Knocks, who got injured. And I think he's a guy that Ryan Poles loves. He's he's one of those soft spot guys.
He
But
was a pretty big highlight on Hard Knocks last year.
yeah. Um so like if you had to go through the season with those four running backs, are you going to be bottom barrel? No. Not even you're middle of the pack. You're middle of the pack team with that stable running backs. It would just be nice to have an infusion of talent. Where DeAndre Swift is not your primary back. He's your either split guy or your change of pace guy or your gadget guy, or get the ball in space guy slash uh, slot receiver part time. Um, that would make this roster a lot better. And so that was my first one for infusion of talent.
I want a difference maker. I think I've decided that. I want a difference maker as running back one.
I'm with you. Um,
Look at Saquon Barkley. Look at Derrick Henry. Look at Gibbs in Detroit. I really do think that the value of the running back is being realized again. We've spent years saying it's a passer's game, it's a passer's game. I'm not saying that it isn't, but the running game goes pretty far, I think. And I think we realize that again. I mean, the Eagles were one of the best teams in football for a reason. And one of those reasons that the offense was so good was because of Saquon Barkley. And yes, they are very good in the trenches. They are very well coached. They have a good scheme. But Saquon Barkley is a difference maker, such a difference maker that he was in the conversation of MVP, a running back as an MVP in the modern NFL where we're used to it just being quarterbacks. I want that. I really, really want that.
I've done a 180. I've always thought that their running back room could use an infusion, but I was I was a staunch at that 10 spot. Do not draft Ashton Genty. Do not. But the moves they made in free agency were, I didn't think that they would be able to accomplish what they did via trade and free agency that they did. Um, I I've done a complete 180 and now I'm in the man. I hope the Raiders don't draft Ashton Genty because there are some really good running backs in this draft, but they are all a distant second and third and fourth to Ashton Genty. Statistically and just the eyeball test, I mean, you
Difference
look,
maker.
he playing, I mean, the only game that he just didn't look really good was that Penn State game. And that was against one of the best run defense teams in college football that
Hmm.
geared up specifically to stop them. And and if you watch, there's still so many plays where he was getting hit in the backfield and breaking tackles and throwing guys off and carrying guys for positive yardage when it should have been a loss.
Right.
And you're like, put that guy on an even playing field with a good offensive line, and you are going to see some magic happen. And that's there's a handful of guys that I think would be really, really good, but I think the top three players in this draft are Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Genty. And if you could get the third best player in the draft at number 10, you're stupid to not. Is that's how you get better. Is you don't just draft a position of need, you draft like elite, the most elite player you can get. And you can get a very good edge rusher. You can get a very good offensive lineman. You could get a very good defensive lineman, but you're not at 10, you're not getting an elite player if unless it's Ashton Genty. Abdul Carter is going to be gone. Travis Hunter is going to be gone. Um, but and Travis Hunter would be a hard one for the Bears because he's probably the second best player in this draft. But where are you playing him? I mean, I guess you're throwing him at corner, and then Tyreek Stevenson becomes your number three, you know, cornerback. But that seems like an overkill. But you if a one of the three best players in the draft falls to you, you got to take him no matter what.
Hmm. Well, here's how I see this whole thing. If Ben Johnson is in that draft room and they have a chance to take him, and Ben Johnson tells you, hey, I need that. How could you, as Ryan Poles, say no, right?
I mean, you if you're Ryan Poles, you put yourself in the position to be able to do that.
Right.
And
And that's he said that. He said that not too long ago in the presser. I think it was at the combine.
yeah, it's I mean, that's the goal every year is to put yourself in a position where you're not stuck. I mean, I listen to this podcast that I like a lot. It's called NFL Stock Exchange. And um and they're two draft guys. One works for PFF and one works for NBC Sports. And it's their own podcast where they're draft nerds and they talk, college players and scouting and um uh I don't remember where I was going with this. I lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about Ryan Poles and
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
being flexible with the moves they
Yeah.
made.
So, they had an episode where they went through top three needs for each team after, the first wave of free agency going into the draft. And there's teams that are just like, oh my God, it's so glaring that they're like, how are they even going to field a team? They don't have a running back. They don't have, the Giants up until yesterday or the day before had one quarterback on their roster. And you're like, all right, that's a glaring need. So there's the Bears, they had to kind of struggle and they're like, all right, well, this could be a need here. They might need, depends on how this goes or thinking about the future. There wasn't this glaring. There's teams out there that like how are they going to pass this position because they don't have anything? They have to. They're painting themselves in a corner. And the Bears are not that. The Bears, there's no position where you're like, yeah, they have to do that. Last year, you're like, they have to draft a quarterback, you know, um, and you were like, man, you really need another wide receiver. And but this year there's nothing you're like, would they have to? And all the draft experts are completely split. Some of them still have, improving at left tackle. There's people taking edge rusher. There's people taking position players, tight ends and wide receivers and running backs. It is nobody knows where the Bears are going to be, and that's really, I don't know. I think that's a good spot to be because if you're the Bears, you're hopeful Ashton Genty falls to you because, um, just looking like the Raiders, man, taking Ashton Genty, a running back at 6, they have so many needs. I feel like they might do that. And New Orleans needs a running back bad, but they need so much. Like, if he gets by the Raiders, I think Ashton Genty is there for the Bears.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. Obviously, unexpected things can happen. Here's the nice thing about the Bears is, even if Ashton Genty isn't available, let's just say he's not. Let's say he's already been taken, and you are in a position where you're keeping your 10th pick, you're not moving, where you can say, okay, you could go in multiple directions for it to logically make sense. If you went with pass rush, okay. If you went with offensive line, okay. Heck, even if you went with another running back, or if you went with some sort of depth on the defensive line, okay. Like there's a lot of scenarios where you can make sense of them going in a direction if they're in that position. Because frankly, I do feel like Ashton Genty, if he is available for the Bears, you can't help but think that it feels like you can't pass on this. You know what I mean? Like you would regret passing on him if he indeed becomes great and it's going to be yet another, oh, the Bears could have taken this guy and they didn't.
Yeah, I hope he's not gone. I mean, I feel like that's the move that they did is everything to get Ashton Genty. And it feels like that movie Draft Day. Ryan Poles has a thing in his pocket. Ashton Genty, no matter what. That's the way it's sort of gearing up, and I'm sort of there for it. Is that could be a huge game changer if you can establish a dominant running game. DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Zacchaeus, and Duvernay are, and that makes them a very, very good wide receiver core.
I just, I think of draft day and I'm thinking of Ryan Poles sitting there and he's got a magic 8 ball from like Toy Story and he's shaking it. Will Ashton Genty be there? Shake, 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 shake. That's how he's gonna handle it.
Uh, I could just be like, I'm trading up to 5. I'm trading up to 5 ahead of the Raiders. And then you've got, everybody else like, don't do it. Don't do it. I wrote down Ashton Genty no matter what. And it means no matter what.
But in this case, you have like a shepherd's hook come out of frame and then enter the frame and then grab Ryan Poles and yank him away, and it's just Ben Johnson at the table.
Like Showtime at the Apollo. And he's a bad performer. And they're chasing him off the stage with the shepherd's crook. Uh, and then the other position I have as needing an infusion of talent is edge rusher. Montez Sweat, if he's healthy is very good. But he's not elite. He's very good. He's not elite. Odengbo is a guy that you sign based on potential. We don't know if he's going to be able to convert that potential into a reality. Austin Booker is a guy that you drafted, and everybody was like, that's a draft pick for next year or the year, but after he's going to take time to develop. But can you count on him? I don't know. He he didn't show us anything this year, which we expected, but until we see something, we don't have anything. Dominique Robinson, I have on this roster just because you don't have anybody better than him to cut him, but he's been a waste. Um, and you just don't have a lot of guys. You carried six at the beginning of last season, and you only have five, and other than Sweat, none of them have done anything in this league. So I think you need an infusion of talent there. And that's the other spot. Like I'm at the point where is if Ashton Genty's not there, that means an edge rusher probably fell to you and you should take an edge rusher.
Sure. No, I mean that's really important, and I think you made some moves this offseason where you hope to get more, but I don't think you can rely on it. Obviously, a big part of this equation is a healthy Montez Sweat, which he was not last year, but you need a high ceiling guy where, the guy they signed from the Colts, I think, is kind of a project, more of a hope and pray type thing where you're just like, okay, there's potential here. Maybe if you put him in the right system, but you haven't seen it at the NFL level yet, and he's been in the NFL, where if you get somebody in the draft in the first round, you're drafting a pretty high ceiling guy. So I think you need that.
So let's see. Quarterbacks, I'm happy with that roster, that room. Running backs, we dealt with. Wide receiver, we dealt with. Tight end, we dealt with. Um, uh, so the last bucket I have is future starters. And I put three position groups there. I put guards. Tackle, I think we're okay because um, Wright he's here for several more years.
I like Wright. I know he had some ups and downs last year, but I still like him.
Um, and then you have Braxton Jones, who's there this year, and I think Kiran Amagaji is the guy that they brought in to replace him if need be. Um, and then I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I said this last year when they brought him in as an undrafted rookie out of Canada. I like Theo Benedette, and this was before Hard Knocks. I liked him. I saw what film I could, and I was like, this is a big, strong guy. It's going to take him a while to. It's probably going to be a 2-year red shirt, but I think you can convert him into somebody. I like Theo Benedette and the Canadian Eagle, um, and I think there's a possibility that he could be a starter at some point if you groom him right. But so I think you've got tackles. I think you're okay. Maybe I could have put infusion of talent or something or depth, but um, in center, Dahlman you signed as your fairly long term guy, and so you know, and you've got a couple of younger players that are there as backup. Ricky Stroman, who I liked coming out of the draft out of Arkansas a couple of years ago. He's wound up on the Bears. And you brought Doug Kramer back, who again I like as well. Not if he's carrying the ball. Do
Yeah,
not want him
don't do
carrying
that
the ball.
again.
But as a center, I do like him. I think you can develop one of those two to be your long term backup. I'm okay with center. I put the first position I have is guard, and Jackson might be here for a couple years, but we have not seen an extension with Joe Tooney, which I thought we would. So he might be one and done with the
He
Bears.
might be. He is older.
And your backups are Ryan Bates, who's been injured, and McFadden, who I don't know anything about. So you need your future starters who could be depth now. Like I think we're going to see guard early. Probably not first rounder. I think it's tough to draft a player at 10 with the intention of him sitting redshirting for a year. But
Oh, there's no way they should do that.
you're going to, I mean, even if it turns out well and you get Joe Tooney plays 1 year and plays well and gets you on the path, and then this guy comes in as a 10-year starter at guard, you are still going to get laughed at for that move. But 39 or 41, I think you can get away with it.
Sure.
So I have guard. The next one I have linebacker, Edmonds and Edwards. I like them. I think they're high talent guys, but that Edmonds contract, it would be nice to be able to move on from that.
And
And
Edmonds was a Matt Eberflus guy, it seems like.
and Edwards is a guy that is probably due for an extension. And
And I do like him.
and your backups are Sewell, who has been injured and is not, we have not seen anything from. He was behind Jack Sanborn. Um, uh, Ogban Bamiga, who was a special teams guy. And then I just threw Bozeman in there because they carried 5 last year. So you've got your starters, but an injury or moving on from a guy, like you don't have that good pipeline there. So I have linebacker as future starter need. Um, Defensive tackle, you've got Billings under contract for a while and Dexter. Jarrett is adds. I didn't put that as needing depth because I think you've got 3 really good players, and I think you'll pick up somebody to fend off or to try to supplant Zach Pickens but they only carried 4 last year. And so I don't know if infusion of talent. Now I think we can just leave defensive tackle alone. We dealt with edge. Um, Dealt with cornerback. The other one is safety. Brisker has a lot of concussion issues. Byard is getting a little old. I don't know if Hicks or Owens are a guy that you want starting regularly. Um, and Brisker is going to be due for a contract soon. And do you feel comfortable giving a guy with concussion issues a long-term big money deal?
Not at the moment. I mean, considering the fact that he's missed how much time recently? I mean, last year he missed what, the second half of the season?
Yeah. Um, so I have safety there. And the last one I have is kicker. Can you live with Cairo Santos? Yes. Would you like a kicker that could kick it farther? Also, yes.
In this, and I am one of the biggest Cairo Santos advocates out there, but I would understand them wanting to get a more powerful kicker because accuracy is not his issue on field goals, at least. Sometimes he has a weird little thing with extra points, but when it comes to field goals, when he misses, it's not wide left, wide right, it's short. And we've seen, remember some of those windy games at Soldier Field where you have like a 45-yard attempt, but the wind is blowing a certain direction, and you even see Cairo Santos kind of doing that motion, like, no, I know I'm not going to get that.
I
So,
know it's for the majority of us, we Bears fans, we like Cairo Santos, but I think part of it is the fact that if we would have gotten him right after we moved on from Robbie Gold, I think people wouldn't look at him as fondly as they do. It's because we had a absolute kicking nightmare for several years, and then came into Cairo Santos, and he rescued us from an abysmal situation and put us in a meh situation, and we've grown to be, well, I like meh because it's not a fiery abyss of hell.
I mean, he did what? Tie the record for most consecutive field goals made?
Yeah, I mean he's very accurate.
Most accurate kicker we've ever had, technically.
We don't have that weapon of, you know what, if we cross that 50-yard line, we're in field goal range.
Well, that's the thing too, is like anything beyond 50 yards makes you tug at your shirt collar, where in this day and age, 55, 60 yarders aren't the wowzers that they used to be for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, like essentially there's kickers out there where you barely cross that 50-yard line and you're in field goal range. And, you know, it puts you in a like that 50 that like 50-yard line to to the 45. Like that's your decision point of all right, do I go for it on fourth down or do we, and then beyond that you're like, okay, I'm going to kick it need be because you're in field goal range. But um but it's we don't have that. We have what's the weather conditions, uh, yeah, what's the field conditions, where are we at, and anything more than 50 yards, we're holding our breath, and anything within 50, you feel pretty confident about. But that 50 plus, and it would be, um, it would be nice. It would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, it would be absolutely like Joey Sly has a really powerful leg.
Yeah, and he's
Tyler
not that
Bass has
accurate.
a really powerful leg. Those are guys who are Kemimi Fairbairn. He's got a powerful leg. Those are the guys where you can make it from 58, 59, 60 yards out. Uh, Young Ho Koo, he's a good kicker too.
Yeah, I mean, with Cairo Santos is like you feel like you've got to be within the 30-yard line. Um,
The nice thing is that if you are within that range, you feel very confident that he's going to make it.
yeah, but with Ben Johnson as your play caller, how many of those are you're probably going to go for it on fourth down?
Well,
If
that's the
he
thing
if he
too.
gets us
Yes.
to so does Cairo Santos then just become like the extra point guy because he's you're not going to use him to kick 50 plus yard field goals. And if you're like around the 25-yard line, you're probably going to go for it on fourth down because if you don't get it, they're pinned back pretty well. And so I don't know. I would just be nice to draft to have competition with somebody with a stronger leg.
No,
Plus,
I get
plus
it.
he
I
makes
do.
he makes a lot of money. And right now the Bears are fine with cap, but you just got to keep an eye on those contracts that you can move on from for lower ones with
Yeah.
equal value.
Yeah. For sure.
Um, yeah. So I mean, really, then when you put these in the bucket, you're like, okay, that takes a lot of positions out of first round. Um, that leaves you with running back and edge as your first round guys.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean I think that's where a lot of people want to focus on.
and and then your second, third round, that's where you start looking at, all right, well, where can we fit guys in? Like probably guard, maybe a safety, uh, linebacker, probably not so much, but a wide receiver or tight end. Um, if Colston Loveland from Michigan falls a little bit, I could see the Bears totally going for him with the 39th pick. Um, so it starts, I kind of had options, but when I looked at it this way, more holistically, it sort of jumped out at me. I'm like, I think it's going to be an edge, it's going to be a pass rusher or a running back. And I can't see the Bears going any other position unless they trade back.
Yeah.
And I
No, that
know
I
I
mean,
and
yeah.
and I know there's a lot of Bears fans like they should just trade back. You got to remember, in order to trade back, you need somebody that's willing to trade with you and not just trade with you because there's plenty of teams that are like, hey, I'll trade that number 15 pick for the number 10 pick straight up. Yeah, what idiot wouldn't take that? Um, but you've got to get the value. Like, so who's trying to give up picks to move up to 10? I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be people clamoring to move up to number 10. So I think the Bears might be stuck drafting and like I said is that's the way I'm seeing it is if it's not a pass rusher or a running back, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, and to your point about trading back is it's very easy for a team to say, well, we want a little more draft capital. We don't like anybody here. Let's just call the Eagles and say, hey, you want to move up here? Or let's call the Bengals. Let's call whoever. And you might call a bunch of teams and say, well, we'll give you this, this, and this. You want to move up here? And, those teams could be looking too, like, well, I'm not really interested in anybody there. I don't really want to reach there. So it takes two to tango.
Yeah. And then, I started looking at draft value. And as much as I would really like to have two picks in the second, early in the second round, I started looking, and the value on those two picks is about equivalent to the number 17, 18-ish pick in the first round. And I'm like, you know what? What if they take Ashton Genty and then one of the edge rushers falls, like Mike Green? What if he falls to like 17 with the Bengals? If you're the Bears, do you look at that as you're not going to get a guy of Mike Green's value in 39. Do you package the 39 and 41 and move up to 17 and just take that huge swing and bring in a guy of like his caliber, so you get, it's like double dipping in that first round.
Mm-hmm.
I I feel like they've filled enough of their holes that it might be worth it to get talent over quantity.
I mean, here's the thing, is if you go that route, then you're depending on that carrying the majority of the positions, knowing that, hey, it's high ceiling, but there's the injury risk. If you're left without depth, there's kind of the balancing play you have to make there. Because is easy to say, yes, stack up on the top tier talent, and there's justification to want to do that. Just keep in mind with the violent nature of the game and how this works is you're gonna want depth somewhere, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a risk. I mean, if you boil three top 100 picks down to two top 17 picks, uh, people are going to judge that. And if you hit a slam dunk, if Ashton Genty is, Saquon Barkley, and Mike Green turns out to be, uh, you know, Micah Parsons, then everybody goes, man, Ryan Poles executive of the year. But if one of those two guys fizzles out or just doesn't reach what you thought they were, and a half first rounders are busts, if one or both of those guys just don't take that step, then man, you look really bad really fast. And you don't have the, you know, three in the top 41. You've got a lot more chances of hitting it right than two in the top 17. So it's a risk, but I think, and I don't know if I totally do it unless it's the absolute right situation. But man, I started looking around and I was like, based on this, you know, the Bears have their two biggest needs, and they're not like dire needs, but they could be. And if you could just absolutely shore them up by making a big trade like that,
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to consider it. And I think the Bears have put themselves in a position where they can just do what they think is best for the team, and they're not painted in a corner. Like I said, they're not painted in a corner. If they decide, you know what, we want to package some picks and be really aggressive, they're in a position to do it. And if Mike Green turns out to be Micah Parsons, and Ashton Genty turns out to be Saquon Barkley, like, you look at that as an all-time draft.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's things, but again, putting yourself in a position where you're not painted in a corner, you can just watch the draft board go. And the Eagles have done that really well. Is they'll trade back, they'll trade up, they'll be aggressive, they'll sit back because they don't have needs, but they watch things go. Hey, you know what? it would be nice for us to have like where we see a wide receiver run go. All right, well that means pass rushers are falling. If there's a run on wide receivers, all right, let's go up there and move up and take one of those pass rushers that fell. Let's go up and take, we needed cornerbacks. Let's go up and move up and take one of those corner because they fell. Like they just get guys that slip and they move up and be aggressive to get them and it pays off. And that's why they won a Super Bowl. And I think sometimes you gotta be a little bit aggressive and hopefully, you know, it shouldn't be all passive, all aggressive. It should be like being in that draft room should be like a chess match. They should be sitting there and watching how the board goes and making that determine how they're going to do things. Like, hey, these are the guys we like. Oh, hey, one of the guys we like is falling because a run on offensive tackles. Let's take advantage of that.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I don't think you paint yourself into a corner on fully going one way or another. I do think there is value in being aggressive. You know what I say? No guts, no glory, right?
Right. So yeah, that was it was a fun exercise, and it's back of the envelope, but just looking at what numbers they kept opening for the opening game and trying to fill that roughly. And you kind of glaringly see where they have needs now, where they have needs in the future. And, I think that's really going to help shape what they do.
Yeah, and this would have been an interesting exercise too to play a few weeks ago before they made their big moves on the offensive line, because I think we would be talking much more heavily about it. Not to say that it's been all solved by any means, but it's definitely shifted the way we think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before free agency, if you would have been like, oh, the Bears are considering Ashton Genty at 10, I would have been just like irrationally angry because it's like that is so not a need.
You'd be
You can
short circuiting.
uh but they shored up their line. They've added talent. They've added depth. They've got position guys. A guy that was supposed to be our starter last year is now our backup. Like that adds depth. So, you shifted away from that. You signed an edge rusher. Like that was a gaping hole. You shored things up. Makes it so, that it completely changed the thinking. And and now you're in a position where, you can play this game a little bit. And it'll, and I think usually I would say the Raiders are the team where you're like, okay, the draft starts here because they might do a Raiders thing. But honestly, I have no idea. I think I know. I think I know number one. I'm fairly certain Cam Ward is going to go number one overall to Tennessee. But after that, do the Browns go, you know what? We can live with Kenny Pickett as quarterback. We're going to draft a really talented defensive player. Like, are the Giants going to say, you know what? We we think we can get a quarterback in the second round that's just as good as Shador Sanders, you know. So we're going to take an elite player. I don't know. I have no idea. It's I think we're like exactly 1 month away from the draft. So things are gonna as the combine or the pro days start and we get closer and closer to the draft, things will start leaking and you'll see players rise and fall. And as the teams slowly phase off of free agency and really shift to prepping for the draft, then we're going to hear more things about players. And so, but right now, as it stands, is after the first pick, I have no idea what's going to happen. And you know, and depending on the Browns and the Giants, that greatly shifts what happens with the Bears. If no team, if only Cam Ward is the only quarterback to go, man, that really throws a wrinkle in there for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get three quarterbacks in the top nine, that that fares really well for the Bears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I want to bring up one thing is a friend of mine asked me to bring this up, and there's a organization called Chicago Hockey Initiative. If you go on their Instagram, it's Chicago Hockey Initiative, and I believe that's their handle on multiple social medias is Chicago Hockey Initiative, no spaces. Um, and they're a Chicago-based group whose mission is to increase access of the game of hockey throughout the Chicagoland area. And right now, they're looking for donations to help keep kids on the ice. So here's their little tagline: "We need your help. Every week, Chicago Hockey Initiative supports youth athletes who deserve a chance to play, regardless of their financial situation. For as little as $5 a month, you can help us keep them in the game. Plus, each donor is entered for our Chicago Hockey Initiative raffle, score exclusive merch and other prizes. Grow the game $1 at a time." So they're looking for some funds to help keep kids that would otherwise not be able to afford to play hockey because it's really expensive to play hockey. Um, so it seems like a cool organization. So I'm going to be donating, and so if anybody out there feels that they're in a position to throw a few dollars at the Chicago Hockey Initiative, check out their socials and see what they're all about.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I said my piece.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. How we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter/X. AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down